Jack Carter had always lived a simple life, fixing engines, repairing old tech, and keeping his head down. That was his routine on Earth, a planet so unimportant in the grand scheme of the galaxy that most aliens barely even considered it worth visiting. But tonight, everything changed. The message came unexpectedly. The cold, robotic voice played through his old, outdated comm device. "Jack Carter, you are summoned to Station Veritas. Executor Raylis will oversee the inheritance transfer." Jack frowned, wiping the grease off his hands. He didn't remember signing up for any inheritance. He barely had anything to his name, let alone rich relatives who'd leave him a fortune. But then he saw the name attached to the transmission. Zor'Thal. A memory flashed in his mind. Years ago, he had pulled an alien out of a burning wreckage when a cargo ship crashed near his old garage. Zor'Thal had been injured, barely clinging to life. Jack had no reason to help him. Humans weren't exactly known for being well respected in the wider universe, but he did it anyway. Bandaged his wounds, gave him food, helped him get back on his feet. After that, they kept in touch over the years, exchanging occasional messages. Now Zor'Thal was dead, and for some reason, he had left Jack something in his will. The shuttle ride to Veritas was uneventful, but Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The station was massive, orbiting a dying blue star, its metal hull lined with security drones. The moment he stepped onto the docking bay, two towering alien guards flanked him. Their reptilian eyes watched him closely as they led him through the dimly lit corridors. Inside the executor's office, a thin, insectoid being with translucent wings greeted him. Raylis. The executor's multiple eyes blinked in an unsettling pattern as he gestured to the large holo-display behind him. Jack Carter. The late Zor'Thal has named you his primary beneficiary. This includes his estate, financial holdings, and personal assets. Jack had barely processed the words when the real shock came. The hologram shifted, displaying a tall, elegant alien woman. Midnight blue skin, intricate silver markings running down her arms, and piercing violet eyes that seemed to glow faintly. She was unlike any woman Jack had ever seen, both stunning and impossibly graceful. "This," Raylis continued, "is Vel'Ra. She is also part of your inheritance." Jack blinked. "What?" The woman stepped forward, tilting her head slightly as she studied him. "By the customs of Zor'Thal's people, I was bonded to him. His passing transfers that bond to you. I am yours now." Jack took a step back. "Hold on. You mean ownership?" Raylis clarified, his mandibles clicking together. "You may refuse, of course, but it would be unwise." Unwise. Jack didn't like the sound of that. He looked at Vel'Ra, expecting to see anger, resentment, something. But she remained composed, her expression unreadable. Before he could ask more, the room's lights flickered. A warning siren blared through the station. "Unauthorized entry detected," a robotic voice announced. Jack barely had time to react before the windows shattered. A sniper's shot tore through the executor's desk, sending shards of metal flying. Raylis collapsed with a screech, his body convulsing as a burning hole sizzled through his chest. Vel'Ra moved in an instant, faster than any human could. She grabbed Jack and yanked him down just as another shot cracked through the air. "They're here for you," she hissed. Jack's heart pounded. Who? The ones who killed Zor'Thal. More shots rang out. The guards outside shouted orders, their weapons firing in rapid bursts. Vel'Ra didn't hesitate. She pulled Jack towards a hidden corridor, shoving him forward, as explosions erupted behind them. As they ran through the emergency escape tunnels, Jack could barely keep up. His mind was racing. A day ago, he was fixing engines in a dusty garage. Now, he was being hunted on a space station, inheriting a fortune he didn't understand, and being told that a breathtaking alien woman was now somehow his responsibility. Jack had no idea what the hell was happening. But one thing was clear. Whatever Zor'Thal left him, people were willing to kill for it. Jack's breath came in ragged gasps as he followed Zor'Thal through the narrow maintenance corridors of the space station. His mind was still struggling to catch up. One moment, he was standing in a legal office, hearing about an inheritance that made no sense, and the next, he was running for his life. The sound of distant gunfire echoed behind them, the assassins not far behind. Whoever they were, they had taken out Rylus without hesitation. Jack had no doubt they'd do the same to him. Zor'Thal moved with sharp, precise speed, her every motion controlled and calculated. Jack could barely keep up, his boots slipping on the grated metal flooring as she led him through a series of dimly lit corridors. "Where the hell are we going?" he managed to ask between breaths. "A way out," she replied, her voice steady. She wasn't even winded. Jack glanced over his shoulder. Shadows flickered at the far end of the corridor. The assassins were getting closer. His heart pounded harder, a mix of adrenaline and terror surging through his veins. Zor'Thal stopped suddenly and reached for the control panel beside a sealed hatch. Her fingers danced over the glowing alien symbols with practiced ease. The door hissed open, revealing a dark chamber beyond. Without hesitation, she grabbed Jack's wrist and pulled him inside just as the sound of approaching footsteps grew louder. The door sealed behind them, the control panel flickering as she locked the access codes. Jack barely had time to take in their surroundings before Zor'Thal pressed a finger to her lips, signaling for silence. Through the narrow viewing slit in the door, Jack could see the figures moving past their hiding place. Their armor was sleek, dark, and deadly, built for stealth, not brute force. Their helmets hid their faces, but Jack could tell they weren't human. Their movements were too fluid, too unnatural. One of them stopped. Jack held his breath. The assassin tilted its head slightly as if listening. The moment stretched unbearably long. Then, just as suddenly as they had come, the group moved on, disappearing into the darkness of the corridor. Zor'Thal exhaled softly. "They won't search here for long. We need to move." Jack turned to her, his mind finally catching up. "Okay. Stop. Just stop for one damn second." His voice was hushed, but filled with frustration. Who the hell were those guys? And why do they want me dead? Zor'Thal regarded him with those unreadable violet eyes. "Because you inherited more than just wealth, Jack Carter." Jack ran a hand through his hair, still trying to steady his breathing. "Yeah, I figured that much. Now explain." She hesitated. It was brief, but he caught it. A flicker of something in her expression, something close to regret. "Zor'Thal wasn't just a wealthy trader," she said finally. "He was involved in dangerous affairs, affairs that made powerful enemies." Jack let out a dry laugh. "Yeah, no kidding." Zor'Thal didn't smile. "The assassins you just saw, they belong to a faction that has been hunting him for years. I suspect they only learned of his death recently. And now, they believe you hold the key to whatever it was he was protecting." Jack shook his head. "But I don't know anything. He never told me about any of this." Zor'Thal tilted her head slightly. "And that is precisely why they will come for you. They won't risk you discovering the truth before they do." Jack swallowed hard. He didn't like the sound of that. "And you? What's your deal in all of this?" For the first time, a flicker of something softened her expression. "Zor'Thal was my bonded partner. By the laws of his people, I now belong to you." Jack exhaled, rubbing his temples. "I still don't understand that part." Zor'Thal stepped closer, and for the first time, Jack noticed the faint, intricate silver lines running along her forearms, almost like glowing tattoos. "His people do not see ownership as you humans do. It is not a matter of possession. It is a matter of duty. By law, my life is now bound to yours." Jack frowned. "And what if I say I don't want that?" Zor'Thal's eyes darkened slightly. "Then I die." Jack's stomach twisted. "What?" "It is a binding contract. If you reject the bond, I will be terminated." My existence was tied to his. With him gone, only my continued service to his heir keeps me alive. Jack took a step back, shaking his head. That's insane. Vel'Ra did not argue. The weight of it all crashed over him. His old friend had died, leaving him an inheritance he didn't understand. Assassins were hunting him for reasons he couldn't begin to grasp. And now, an alien woman, one who clearly had her own secrets, was bound to him by some ancient law he didn't even believe in. He was way out of his depth. But before he could process any of it, Vel'Ra moved again, pressing her hand against another hidden panel on the wall. The floor beneath them shifted slightly as the wall before them slid open, revealing a small hangar bay. A sleek transport vessel sat docked, its engines humming faintly. Jack didn't need to be told twice. He followed Vel'Ra as she led him up the ramp. The moment they were inside, she secured the doors and moved toward the controls. Jack watched as the station's alarm continued blaring. He had a sick feeling this was only the beginning. Vel'Ra's fingers danced over the controls, activating the ship's launch sequence. "We cannot stay here," she said simply. Jack leaned against the co-pilot's chair, exhaling sharply. Yeah, no argument there. The ship rumbled beneath them as it lifted off the platform. Through the viewport, Jack could see the vast stretch of space beyond. The station was now a death trap. Staying was no longer an option. As the stars stretched before them, Jack realized his life was no longer his own. Whatever Zor'Thal had been protecting, whatever secret he had taken to his grave, was now Jack's burden to bear. And people were willing to kill for it. The ship hummed softly as it drifted through the cold vastness of space, the glowing blue trails of its engines fading into the darkness. Jack sat in the co-pilot's seat, staring at the endless void ahead. The weight of everything that had happened in the last few hours pressed down on him like an anchor. He still wasn't sure if this was real. Maybe he was hallucinating. Maybe he was in some kind of messed-up dream. But the dull ache in his ribs from being thrown to the floor earlier, the smell of scorched metal still clinging to his clothes, and the steady breathing of the stunning alien woman seated beside him, all of it told him this was real. Too real. Vel'Ra worked silently at the controls, her violet eyes scanning the readouts. She was eerily calm, her posture rigid, movements efficient. Jack had seen soldiers back on Earth with that same level of focus, the kind that came from years of training, of knowing that hesitation could mean death. Jack leaned back, running a hand over his face. "So, you want to tell me where we're going?" Vel'Ra didn't look at him. A safe location, off the common travel routes. Jack scoffed. "That's not an answer. Where exactly?" There was a brief pause before she finally spoke. Zor'Thal owned an estate on the planet HFY. It is remote, lightly populated. The security systems there are still operational. It is the best place to regroup. Jack exhaled through his nose, shaking his head. "Right, sure, a secret space mansion. Because why the hell not?" Vel'Ra didn't react to his sarcasm. He wasn't even sure she understood it. Instead, she simply entered the final coordinates, and the ship shuddered as it activated the jump drive. A deep hum vibrated through the hull as the stars outside stretched into long, thin streaks of light. Jack swallowed hard, still not used to the sensation. Faster-than-light travel was something he'd only ever heard about, never experienced firsthand. Another brutal reminder that he was far, far away from the life he once knew. For a long moment, there was only silence. Just the steady hum of the ship and the distant beeping of the control panels. Jack stared at Vel'Ra, watching the way she sat so still, so composed. He had no idea who she really was, or what she was capable of. "You haven't told me the full truth, have you?" he asked suddenly. Vel'Ra finally turned to look at him. "I have told you what you need to know." "That's not the same thing," Jack shot back. "You knew about those assassins. You knew Zor'Thal was in deep trouble. And yet you waited until we were getting shot at to tell me." Vel'Ra's gaze was unreadable. "You would not have believed me otherwise." Jack clenched his jaw. She wasn't wrong. If someone had told him all this before he saw it with his own eyes, he would have laughed in their face. But that didn't make him feel any better. "So what now?" he asked, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "I just take Zor'Thal's place, inherit his wealth, his enemies, and his—" He hesitated. His bonded partner. Velra's expression remained impassive, but there was something in her eyes, something Jack couldn't quite read. "You are his chosen heir," she said simply. "The wealth, the estate, the responsibilities, all of it now belongs to you." Jack let out a humorless chuckle. "Great. And what if I don't want any of this?" Velra was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice softer this time. "Then you will not survive long." Jack stared at her. The way she said it, so matter-of-fact, sent a chill down his spine. Before he could respond, an alarm blared through the cockpit. Velra's head snapped toward the control panel, her fingers flying over the holographic display. Jack sat up. "What now?" "Proximity alert," Velra said, her tone sharp. "We are not alone." Jack cursed under his breath. Of course they weren't. A holoscreen flickered to life, displaying a radar-like image. 3 red blips, moving fast. Pirates, Jack guessed. Velra's jaw tightened. No, bounty hunters. Jack's stomach twisted. "You're sure?" "Positive." As if on cue, the comm system crackled to life. A voice, deep and dripping with arrogance, filled the cockpit. "Unidentified vessel. Your ship matches the registry of a recent bounty. Surrender now, and we will grant you a swift death." Jack exhaled sharply. "Well, that's reassuring." Velra didn't respond. Instead, she gripped the controls, and the ship lurched sharply to the right, veering off course just as the first barrage of plasma fire streaked past them. The glowing projectiles barely missed, illuminating the dark cockpit for a brief second before vanishing into the void. Jack braced himself, gripping the sides of his seat. "Tell me this thing has weapons." Velra's fingers danced over the console. "Minimal defenses, not designed for combat." Jack swore under his breath. "That's a no, then." The bounty hunters were closing in fast. The ship shuddered as another shot grazed their hull, sending sparks flying across the control panels. Velra's eyes flickered with determination. "Hold on." Before Jack could ask why, the ship suddenly flipped, spiraling downward at a sharp angle. The force pressed Jack into his seat, his stomach twisting uncomfortably. The bounty hunters weren't expecting the maneuver. They overshot their attack, their ships zooming past at dangerously high speeds. Velra seized the moment, twisting the controls again. Their ship dove into a dense asteroid field just as another blast narrowly missed them. Jack's breath hitched. The asteroids were massive floating debris spinning unpredictably in the dark. One wrong move, and they'd be nothing but a smear on a rock. "Are you insane?" Jack shouted. Velra's grip on the controls was unshakable. "They will not follow us here." Jack glanced at the radar. The bounty hunters hesitated at the edge of the field. One of the ships made a move to follow, but within seconds, an asteroid the size of a small building came barreling through, smashing the hunter's ship into pieces. Jack flinched. Well, that was brutal. The other 2 ships immediately pulled back, unwilling to risk the same fate. The radar screen flickered as they disappeared from range. Velra finally eased her grip on the controls, letting out a slow breath. The ship leveled out, gliding through the field with careful precision. Jack exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Okay, I'll admit, that was impressive." Velra didn't respond. She was already back to plotting their course. Jack leaned back in his seat, staring at the asteroid-filled abyss around them. He had no idea what the hell he had gotten himself into. But one thing was clear. Whoever these bounty hunters were, they weren't the only ones after him. And next time, he might not be so lucky. The ship drifted through the dense asteroid field, its engines humming softly as Vel'Ra navigated through the treacherous maze of floating rocks. Jack sat in the co-pilot's seat, staring at the endless expanse of space beyond the viewport. His heart was still hammering from the chase, but his mind was struggling to process something even bigger. The bounty hunters weren't just after him because of the money. If this were just about Zor'Thal's wealth, they could have waited until he claimed the inheritance, then stolen it from him later. But they were hunting him now before he even had the chance to figure out what he had inherited. That meant this was about more than money. It meant he had something they wanted, something more valuable than credits. Jack let out a slow breath. "You're still not telling me everything, are you?" Vel'Ra, who had been focused on piloting, finally turned her head to look at him. Her violet eyes shimmered under the dim light of the cockpit. "You are beginning to understand," she said simply. Jack scoffed, shaking his head. "Not really. But I know when I'm being played." Vel'Ra's gaze remained steady. "Zor'Thal left you something. Something more than wealth. That is why they are hunting you." Jack clenched his jaw. "And what exactly did he leave me?" Vel'Ra hesitated for a fraction of a second. That hesitation was all Jack needed to confirm his suspicions. "You don't know, do you?" he said, narrowing his eyes. She exhaled, her expression unreadable. "I was not privy to all of Zor'Thal's dealings. I only know that before his death, he secured an item of great importance, one that could shift the balance of power among certain factions." Jack frowned. "What kind of item?" "I do not know." Jack let out a dry laugh, shaking his head. "Great, so I'm being hunted for something I don't even know exists. That's fantastic." Vel'Ra didn't react. She simply turned back to the controls and adjusted their heading. The ship slipped through the final stretch of the asteroid field, emerging into open space once more. Ahead of them, a small planet loomed in the distance, HFY. The world was covered in thick, swirling clouds, its surface barely visible beneath the atmosphere. Jack had no idea what kind of place it was, but if Zor'Thal had an estate here, then at least it would have some answers. As the ship descended into the planet's atmosphere, turbulence shook the hull. Vel'Ra adjusted the stabilizers, guiding them smoothly through the rough winds. Below, Jack could see vast stretches of mountainous terrain, with jagged cliffs and thick forests covering the land. The estate came into view moments later. It wasn't what Jack expected. The structure was massive, built into the side of a mountain, its sleek metallic walls blending with the rocky landscape. The architecture was distinctly alien, with sharp edges and intricate glowing patterns carved into the exterior. Towering defense turrets flanked the perimeter, though they remained inactive as the ship approached. Vel'Ra pressed a sequence of buttons on the console. The estate's automated systems responded immediately, recognizing the ship's signature. A landing bay extended from the mountainside, opening like the maw of some great beast, welcoming them inside. As they touched down, Jack felt a strange sense of unease. Something about this place didn't feel right. The ship's engines powered down, and Vel'Ra stood, motioning for Jack to follow. He hesitated for only a moment before unstrapping himself and stepping out onto the landing bay. The air was crisp and cool, carrying the faint scent of metal and damp earth. Jack glanced around, taking in the vastness of the place. The walls were lined with automated security drones, their glowing eyes scanning for threats. The silence was unnerving. "This place looks abandoned," Jack muttered. Vel'Ra stepped forward, pressing her palm against a nearby control panel. A soft chime echoed through the landing bay as the system recognized her. "Estate systems are in standby mode," she explained. Zor'Thal kept this place heavily secured. Only those he trusted were allowed access. Jack crossed his arms. "And I'm just supposed to trust that no one else has been here since he died." Vel'Ra turned toward him, her expression unreadable. "We will find out soon enough." The doors leading into the estate slid open with a soft hiss. The interior was vast, with high ceilings and dim blue lighting casting eerie shadows along the walls. The place was sleek and modern, yet strangely cold, like it had been designed for efficiency rather than comfort. Jack followed Zor'Thal through the main hall, his footsteps echoing on the polished floor. The deeper they went, the more uneasy he felt. The estate was too quiet. No movement, no signs of life. And then they found the body. Jack froze as Zor'Thal knelt beside it. The corpse was alien, though he wasn't sure what species. The being's skin was a pale grayish hue, and its body was twisted at an unnatural angle. Whatever had killed it had been violent. Zor'Thal examined the wounds carefully. Blaster shot to the chest. Short range. This was an execution. Jack's stomach turned. That's great. So someone got here before us. Zor'Thal's gaze flickered toward the security console on the far wall. Without hesitation, she moved toward it and pressed a series of buttons. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the estate's last recorded security footage. Jack watched as the images played. The time-stamped feed showed the estate's corridors, silent and empty, until a group of figures moved into view. 3 heavily armored individuals. Their faces were obscured by helmets, but their weapons were unmistakable. Assassins. Jack clenched his fists. Those are the same guys from the station. Zor'Thal nodded. They came looking for something. The footage jumped forward. The assassins moved methodically through the estate, searching each room with practiced precision. Then suddenly, the screen glitched. A few seconds later, the image returned, showing only an empty hallway. They found something, Jack muttered. Zor'Thal's fingers moved quickly over the console, searching for any further footage, but the rest of the logs had been wiped. They knew how to cover their tracks, she said, but they left in a hurry. Jack exhaled, which means they either didn't find what they were looking for, or they found it and didn't need to stick around. Zor'Thal turned toward him. Either way, we need to move quickly. If they left something behind, it may still be here. Jack nodded, forcing down the growing unease in his gut. Whatever Zor'Thal had been hiding, it had already drawn blood. And now, it was Jack's responsibility to figure out what was worth killing for. The cold air inside the estate felt heavier now, pressing against Jack's skin like an unshakable weight. The dead body on the floor was more than just a gruesome sight. It was a message. Whoever had been here before them had been searching for something, and they had been willing to kill for it. Jack had no doubt that if they had arrived just a little later, he could have been the next corpse lying on the pristine floor of Zor'Thal's fortress. Zor'Thal was already working on the security console, her fingers moving in precise, calculated motions as she sifted through whatever data remained after the assassins had wiped most of it. The estate's logs were heavily encrypted, but Jack could see from the tension in her posture that she had found something. "What is it?" he asked, stepping closer. Zor'Thal's violet eyes flickered toward him before she turned the holoscreen toward his view. The recording was fragmented, skipping every few seconds as if someone had deliberately tried to erase key moments. But there was enough left to piece together a disturbing story. The first image showed Zor'Thal standing in this very hall, his face tense, his arms crossed. He wasn't alone. Across from him stood a figure in dark, tactical armor, their face hidden beneath a sleek, black helmet. The assassin. The same kind that had killed the executor on the space station. Jack swallowed hard as the footage continued. Zor'Thal was speaking, but the audio was corrupted. His body language told Jack everything. He was negotiating. Not begging, not cowering, but trying to reason with whoever had come for him. Then, without warning, the assassin raised a sleek pistol and fired. Jack flinched, watching Zor'Thal collapse to the floor. The image flickered, then cut out entirely. Jack clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. They executed him, just like that. Zor'Thal remained silent, her gaze fixed on the darkened screen. After a moment, she spoke, her voice steady but sharp. They did not come here for him. They came for what he was protecting. Jack took a step back, his mind racing. And whatever it was, they didn't find it, did they? Vel-Ra turned back to the console, bringing up a new display, an old locked file with an encrypted marker. Zor'Thal's personal vault. The timestamp on the access logs showed it hadn't been opened in years. Not by Zor'Thal. Not by the assassins. Jack exhaled sharply. So whatever they were after is still here. Vel-Ra nodded. It is highly likely. Jack looked back at the dead body in the hall, unease curling in his stomach. Then we don't have much time before they come back. Vel-Ra had already anticipated that. Moving quickly, she deactivated the estate's emergency lockdown, granting them full access to the restricted areas. The security vaults were located deeper inside the fortress, past several reinforced doors that only recognize Zor'Thal's clearance codes. Jack followed closely as Vel-Ra led the way through the dimly lit corridors. The deeper they went, the more alien the architecture became. The walls here weren't sleek and polished like the upper levels. They were carved with intricate, glowing symbols, pulsing faintly like veins beneath the surface. The air smelled different too, charged, electric. Jack ran his fingers over one of the glowing patterns, feeling a strange warmth beneath his touch. What is this place? Vel-Ra didn't slow her pace. Zor'Thal's people were the keepers of the vaults. They safeguarded knowledge and artifacts far older than their civilization. This estate was not merely his home, it was his duty. Jack let that sink in as they reached a towering metal door at the end of the corridor. Unlike the others, this one had no visible controls, no keypad or biometric scanner. Instead, it had a single indentation in the center, shaped like a handprint. Vel-Ra turned to Jack. Place your hand there. Jack hesitated. Why me? Zor'Thal named you his heir. His genetic markers would have been transferred to you upon his passing. The vault will recognize that. Jack clenched his jaw. He still wasn't ready to accept this, any of this, but he didn't have time to argue. Taking a slow breath, he stepped forward and pressed his palm against the cold metal surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the glowing symbols along the walls flared brighter, pulsing in a rhythmic pattern. The metal beneath Jack's hand became warm, then hot, before suddenly a surge of energy shot through his arm. Jack gasped, stumbling back as the door rumbled, its massive locks unsealing one by one with deep mechanical clanks. The heavy metal doors slid apart, revealing the chamber beyond. Jack's heart pounded as he stepped inside. The room was vast, lined with rows of floating crystalline objects, each pulsing with an inner light. But in the center, resting on a raised pedestal, was something else entirely. A small, glowing artifact, no larger than a human fist. Jack's breath caught in his throat as he stepped closer. The artifact's surface was smooth, almost glass-like, but the moment his gaze locked onto it, he felt something stir inside his mind. Whispers, faint, distant, like 1,000 voices speaking all at once. Jack shook his head, trying to clear the strange sensation. What the hell is this thing? Vel-Ra stood beside him, her expression unreadable. The reason you are being hunted. Jack swallowed hard. Yeah, I figured that much. But what does it do? Vel-Ra hesitated. I do not know. Jack turned to her, his pulse quickening. You don't know. This artifact predates even Zor'Thal's people, she said. It is one of the last surviving relics of an ancient race, one that vanished long before any of our civilizations existed. Some say these artifacts contain knowledge. Others say they contain power. Jack stared at the glowing object, his mind racing. And you're telling me I just inherited this? Vel-Ra met his gaze. Yes. Jack let out a humorless laugh. Fantastic. So now what? Before Vel-Ra could answer, the vault's warning alarms blared to life. Jack's stomach dropped. Tell me that's not what I think it is. Vel-Ra's violet eyes flickered with urgency. They have returned. Jack's mind snapped into action. The assassins hadn't found the artifact before, but now they knew exactly where to look. and they were coming for him. The warning sirens pulsed through the estate like a heartbeat, each shrill alarm pounding against Jack's skull. Vel-Ra had already drawn her weapon, her sleek, alien pistol humming with energy as she turned toward the entrance of the vault. Jack, on the other hand, had nothing but his rapidly increasing heart rate and the unsettling knowledge that he was now holding something worth killing for. The artifact in his hands radiated a soft, pulsing glow. It was warm to the touch, almost like it was alive. Jack could still hear the faint whispers tickling the edges of his mind, an ancient language he couldn't understand, but something deep inside him recognized. It was speaking to him. Vel-Ra's voice snapped him back to reality. "We have no time. We must leave." Jack exhaled sharply. "Yeah, I got that part. You got a plan." Vel-Ra's eyes flicked to the security display on the wall, showing the estate's upper levels. The assassins were moving fast, too fast. They were already inside, sweeping through the corridors with frightening precision. Unlike last time, they weren't searching for something. They knew exactly where to go. Jack's stomach twisted. They must have tracked us somehow. Vel-Ra nodded grimly. "A tracer, most likely. We need to assume they have reinforcements waiting outside." Jack clenched his jaw. They weren't getting out of this one easily. Vel-Ra stepped closer, her expression sharp with urgency. "The artifact must not fall into their hands. If we are captured, you must not let them take it." Jack narrowed his eyes. "You're talking like that's an option." She didn't respond, but she didn't need to. Jack swallowed hard and turned toward the artifact pedestal, looking for some kind of storage case. "Can we at least put this thing in something? I don't want to walk around holding a glowing space rock while we're being shot at." Vel-Ra reached into a compartment on her belt and pulled out a small, sleek container made of dark metallic material. "This should shield its energy signature." Jack quickly placed the artifact inside, the glow vanishing the moment the lid sealed shut. The whispers in his mind dulled, like a distant echo being silenced. He let out a breath of relief, until the first explosion rocked the estate. The walls trembled. A muffled boom echoed through the corridors, followed by the unmistakable sound of blaster fire. "They're breaching the lower levels," Vel-Ra said. "We must move." Jack gritted his teeth and nodded. They bolted out of the vault, retracing their steps through the twisting corridors of the estate. The lights flickered erratically, casting eerie shadows along the walls. Jack's pulse pounded in his ears. Then, another explosion, closer this time. Vel-Ra abruptly stopped, pushing Jack back against the wall just as a trio of heavily armed assassins rounded the corner ahead of them. Their dark armor gleamed under the dim lighting, their visors glowing a sinister red. They moved with lethal efficiency, their weapons raised the second they spotted movement. Vel-Ra didn't hesitate. She fired first, her blaster sending 2 rapid shots straight into the nearest assassin's chest. The energy projectiles hit their mark, but the assassin's armor absorbed most of the impact, only staggering him back a step. The other 2 immediately returned fire. Jack barely had time to react before Vel-Ra grabbed his arm and yanked him into a side passage, just as a spray of plasma rounds burned through the air where he had been standing. The shots struck the wall behind them, sending molten shards of metal scattering in every direction. Jack hit the ground hard, cursing under his breath. "I really, really hate these guys." Vel-Ra crouched beside him, reloading her weapon. "They are well trained. We cannot fight them head on." Jack nodded quickly. "Agreed. So how do we get out of here?" Vel-Ra glanced up toward the ceiling. "The ventilation shafts lead to the upper terrace. If we can reach the secondary hangar, we may be able to escape before more arrive." Jack groaned. "Of course it's the vents. Why is it always the vents?" Vel-Ra ignored him, already moving toward a nearby panel on the wall. With a sharp pull, she pried it open, revealing a narrow passage just big enough for them to crawl through. Jack grimaced, but didn't argue. The sound of approaching footsteps behind them made sure of that. He climbed into the shaft first, Vel'Ra following closely behind. The metal walls were cold and tight, the air inside stale. Jack tried not to think about how vulnerable they were in here. One wrong move, and they'd be sitting ducks. The passage stretched on for what felt like forever. The occasional distant explosion shook the walls, rattling the panels beneath them. Jack's muscles ached from crawling, but he kept moving, forcing himself forward. Then, just as they reached an intersection in the shaft, Vel'Ra grabbed his ankle. Hard. Jack froze. What? Vel'Ra was perfectly still, her eyes sharp with warning. Then Jack heard it. A soft, metallic clank. His heart skipped a beat. He didn't need to see it to know what it was. A motion-triggered explosive. Jack swallowed hard. That's bad. Vel'Ra nodded. Very. Jack exhaled slowly, his mind racing. Okay. Can we deactivate it? Vel'Ra hesitated, then shook her head. Not without triggering it. Jack clenched his jaw. Then what do we do? Vel'Ra's gaze flicked toward another section of the vent just ahead. A small maintenance hatch leading down into one of the estate's upper rooms. We dropped down. Now. Jack barely had time to register her words before she shoved him forward. The vent panel beneath him gave way, and Jack tumbled out, hitting the floor with a hard thud. Vel'Ra landed gracefully beside him a second later. They barely had time to catch their breath before the explosion erupted above them. The blast sent a shockwave through the room, shaking the walls and showering them in debris. Jack coughed, pushing himself up as dust filled the air. That was way too close, he muttered. Vel'Ra didn't respond. She was already moving toward a security terminal in the room, checking the estate's hangar status. Jack pushed himself to his feet, still clutching the artifact case tightly in his hands. The screen flickered to life, revealing a single remaining escape vessel docked in the secondary hangar. Jack felt a flicker of hope, until he saw the movement outside the estate. A fleet of black, angular ships had arrived, hovering just above the landing platforms. More assassins, more reinforcements. Jack's stomach dropped. You were right. They brought backup. Vel'Ra's jaw tightened. We will have to fight our way through. Jack exhaled sharply. His fingers curled around the artifact case, feeling the weight of it in his grip. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was a war. And Jack had just become the center of it. The estate trembled under the weight of incoming fire, the distant thuds of plasma rounds pounding against its reinforced walls. Jack gritted his teeth, gripping the artifact case tighter as he and Vel'Ra sprinted down the corridor leading to the secondary hangar. Their only remaining escape ship was waiting, but between them and the docking bay stood an entire squad of assassins. Jack's breath was ragged, his heart hammering in his chest. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a fighter. He was just a mechanic who had been thrust into a ward he didn't understand. But right now, none of that mattered. If he didn't get out of here, if he let the artifact fall into enemy hands, Zor'Thal's death would mean nothing. Vel'Ra moved with relentless precision, her blaster firing short, controlled bursts as they turned the final corner. Two assassins were waiting for them, their dark armor gleaming under the dim lights. They raised their weapons, but Vel'Ra was faster, a single shot to the knee, a second to the throat. One collapsed instantly, the other staggered, choking on his own breath before slumping to the floor. Jack barely had time to register the cold efficiency of her movements before she grabbed his wrist and pulled him forward. Keep moving. The doors to the hangar bay loomed ahead, the control panel flickering as it recognized Vel'Ra's clearance codes. The reinforced blast doors groaned open, revealing their ship, a sleek, modified freighter with battle scars lining its hull. It wasn't pretty, but it would fly. Unfortunately, they weren't the only ones in the hangar. Jack's stomach twisted as he saw 5 assassins waiting for them, all armed, all ready. They had known. They had anticipated this. A figure stepped forward from the group, their armor slightly different, sleeker, lined with dark silver etchings. Unlike the others, this assassin removed their helmet. Beneath it was a humanoid face, pale skin, sharp features, piercing golden eyes. Their gaze locked onto Jack, calculating and cold. Jack Carter. The assassin's voice was smooth, controlled. Surrender the artifact, and you may yet walk away from this. Jack clenched his jaw, gripping the case tighter. Yeah. Forgive me if I don't believe that. The assassin's golden eyes flickered with amusement. You misunderstand. The artifact does not belong to you. It was never meant to belong to anyone. Vel'Ra stepped in front of Jack, raising her weapon. You slaughtered Zor'Thal for this, and now you expect us to hand it over. The assassin tilted their head slightly, expression unreadable. Zor'Thal was a fool. He kept secrets he did not understand. Secrets that could unravel everything. Jack felt a cold chill creep up his spine. He didn't know what the artifact was capable of, but he knew what kind of people kill to keep secrets buried. The assassin took a slow step forward. You do not comprehend the power you hold. That artifact is not a weapon. It is a key. Jack's grip tightened around the case. A key to what? The assassin smiled faintly. To an empire long buried. Before Jack could react, Vel'Ra fired. The shot was precise, aimed for the assassin's head, but in the blink of an eye, the enemy moved, impossibly fast. They twisted to the side, the plasma bolt grazing their shoulder before they lunged forward. Jack barely had time to process what happened next. The assassin closed the distance between them in an instant, drawing a curved energy blade from their side. Vel'Ra dodged the first strike, countering with a sharp elbow to the assassin's side. The two moved like blurs, a dance of violence too fast for Jack to follow. Jack took a step back, heart pounding. He had to do something. He couldn't just stand there. His eyes flicked to the ship. If they could get on board, they had a chance. But with 5 more assassins waiting, it wouldn't be easy. His fingers tightened around the artifact case. And then it pulsed. A sudden, searing wave of energy rippled through Jack's body, sharp and electric, like something waking up inside his bones. His breath hitched, his vision flickering for a brief second. And then the whispers returned. But this time, they weren't just whispers. They were instructions. Jack barely understood what was happening, but he moved. His body reacted before his mind could process, turning sharply and slamming his palm onto the nearest control panel. The hangar bay lights flickered. A low, ancient hum filled the air. The assassins hesitated. That was their mistake. The artifact's energy rippled outward, sending a shockwave through the room. The air crackled with power, the temperature shifting as if the very fabric of space was bending. And then, everything exploded into motion. Vel'Ra seized the opportunity. She twisted her opponent's wrist, forcing the energy blade out of their grasp before delivering a brutal knee to the ribs. The assassin staggered. Jack turned toward the remaining enemies. They were still stunned by the artifact's sudden activation, but not for long. His mind raced. Think, damn it. His eyes locked onto a cargo crane overhead. Without hesitation, he slammed the control panel again, sending the massive mechanical arm swinging down toward the assassins. The nearest one dodged, but the second was too slow. The metal claw smashed into him, sending him flying across the hangar. Jack didn't stop to see if he was dead. He grabbed Vel'Ra's arm, pulling her toward the ship. Go. Now. Vel'Ra didn't argue. She sprinted alongside him, leaping onto the loading ramp as Jack dove in behind her. The moment they were inside, she slammed the emergency lockdown controls. The assassins recovered quickly, their weapons raising. But they were too late. Vel'Ra hit the thrusters. The ship roared to life, engines blasting as it lifted from the hangar floor. Jack barely had time to strap himself in before they shot forward, breaking through the hangar doors and into the open sky. Behind them, the estate erupted in a fiery explosion, consumed by its own collapsing structure. The assassins had been so focused on the artifact, they hadn't seen the chain reaction Jack had triggered. Jack sucked in a breath, his entire body trembling. Velra didn't look at him. Her hands were steady on the controls, her focus locked on the empty void ahead. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, finally, Jack exhaled. What the hell just happened? Velra didn't take her eyes off the stars. You awakened it. Jack swallowed. That's not comforting. She turned to him then, her expression unreadable. They will never stop hunting you now. Jack looked down at the artifact case, his fingers still curled around it. He could still feel the hum of energy beneath the surface. He had no idea what he was holding, but he knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning.